This is episode number 3 of the Expert Table Tennis podcast. My name is Ben Larcombe, and on today's show, I'm joined by Alex Polyakov, who's the author of the book Breaking 2000, which is all about his journey from being a complete table tennis novice to reaching the 2000 level in table tennis in the US. And I guess Alex was part of the inspiration for my own Expert in a Year challenge that I did with Sam. He's got an awful lot to say about table tennis, and he's got that first-hand experience of what it actually takes to go from being a beginner to a decent level player. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and let's get straight into it with Alex Polyakov. So I'm joined today on the Expert Table Tennis podcast by Alex Polyakov, who is the author of a couple of table tennis books, Breaking 2000 and The Next Step is the second one. Hi Alex, how are you doing?
Hey Ben, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going great. Really good to have you on the show. I read your book a while ago, and I know we've spoken a few times, so I know you've got loads of great stuff that you'll be able to share with the audience. First thing I wanted to ask you is just about your book Breaking 2000, and especially kind of how you got started in table tennis and came up with that whole idea in the first place.
Oh wow, so who would have thought that I would actually get into table tennis out of all things? So I actually write about it in my book a little bit, but I was playing volleyball a little bit, and I was doing quite a lot of sports, and managed to mess up my ankle. Basically blocking at the net, twisted it real bad, stage 3 sprain, the whole 9 yards. And
Right.
In my recovery, I'm wearing this big boot and I'm not able to jump a lot. So I'm, probably a couple months into the recovery, I'm like feeling a little bit better and decide right next to our court where I was looking at the games, there's a bunch of people playing, ping pong. So, I thought to myself, well, I used to be good at this in my basement, so why don't I just go in and check it out? And that's, I kind of thought that I didn't have to move a lot. Well, that was a mistake. So from there on, I just I get sucked in, and, somebody at work already donated the table by then, and, so there was a few of us guys playing every lunch. And, things just spiraled out of control, really. I mean, I fell in love with the game, and then, created sort of the goal to, get better. There's, too many players that would essentially beat me badly, and I needed to learn how to fight back. So that was a start.
Nice. How old were you at the time?
I was 28. I can't actually. So it was like August or September of 2008, something like that.
Cool. So you came up with this idea and you really set your heart on getting good at table tennis. What were kind of the first steps that you went about doing to make that happen?
Well, setting the heart was actually, just the beginning. In reality, I had no idea how to do anything. So there was one club level coach, but he was pretty horrific. I mean, for an hour, you could just hit the ball with him. And he would keep the ball on the table most of the time, rather than some other people that I was playing it. But for the most part, really the drive to improve got around after I met my coach. I finally saw how some better players were playing, and it was really uncanny. Having the ability of just return any kind of shot. Well, that's what it was perceived to me at least the first time when I met my coach. And just like having all the answers, the easiest shots to just win the point. Nothing hard. Just control and placement. And I found that fascinating. Actually, my coach at the time, he was not planning on coaching at all. He wasn't going to pick up the paddle. And I guess I was one of the players to break him out of that and convince him that, teaching other people table tennis was actually, a pretty positive and a rewarding experience. So right now, actually, he has about somewhere around 15 or 20 students practicing with him. So he's been getting into it quite a lot. And the good thing is that everyone right now, especially working out with him, has grown. So he's not just a coach. He's a friend. He's a pal. he's a mentor. I mean, so many other things. I mean, really a genuine teacher, and that's pretty rare to find, especially here.
Right. And he's Gerard, is that his name?
Yeah, Gerald Reed. That is correct.
Right. You talk about him in the book, don't you?
Oh yeah, he's my inspiration.
So what exactly were you doing in your sessions with him, and like how often were you having sessions?
Well, so we started with the basics. I mean, I had no techniques, just forehands, backhands, counters, learning loop, learning to push the ball, like the typical stuff. I write about it pretty much in the book, but I started working out with him maybe 1 hour a week, then I increased it to 2, then soon after it became 4, then soon after it became 6. So for the most part, I would practice with him about 4 to 6 hours a week. For a period of about 2 years, and then also I would play probably 6 to 7 days, which for the most part was not practice; it was just hitting. But so those that was my sort of quote unquote structured and unstructured regimen.
So how many hours do you reckon you were doing kind of an average week?
Oh God, I'd say probably somewhere around 25. Or actually, when that article came out and I started getting into the 10,000 hours, I actually calculated that by the time I got to reach the level that I wanted to reach, I must have put in about 3,500 hours or something like that.
Okay.
Not all of it was purposeful, but for the most part, that's what I can calculate.
So you were playing a lot of table tennis.
Oh yeah.
You also had a robot, because I've seen some videos of you training with a robot as well.
Oh yeah.
I assume that was additional practice. But what kind of things were you doing with the robot, and did you find that useful?
So robot is an interesting thing. I mean, for the most part, I think its best feature is that you could really work out the minor adjustments and strokes. Because it gives you the same identical ball, so you could actually figure out how to work it. So mostly what I was doing is I did not know how to handle a ball against underspin, basically an attack against underspin. So I put in a lot of effort specifically in that stroke, and the robot was perfect. It would give you an identical spin, an identical, essentially distance, so I could actually execute my stroke with confidence. And I think that was a big push in getting me to understand how I could do it better. But for the most part, I find that it also has a very easy capacity to disintegrate the game, because players have a tendency to keep cranking the spin or the speed too much, in which case it just becomes unrealistic, and then we know why players miss the ball. For the most part, they either underdo it in the stroke or overdo it. So you just got to have the right feel for the ball, and I guess that's something that it gets developed over time. But the robot is perfect for getting the hang of at least first early shots. I've used it pretty rarely. I mean, I put it in the video, but for the most part, maybe once a month, twice a month, something like that.
Okay, so it was predominantly playing with your coach and then with other people at the club.
Yeah.
Were you doing lots of kind of regular drills and things where you were just practicing, or how much time were you spending working on matches and serve and return and all that kind of stuff?
So it really depended. If I had a tournament coming up, I would definitely practice more serve and return. Third ball attack pretty much was the stroke, the tactic to have for at least the early levels, because people didn't have defense that was good enough to block it. So for the most part, it was service, it was return, and it was attacking of the third ball. Now, if I didn't have any tournaments coming up, this is where it would be sort of the strategic training with movement. Most of it was, transition, backhand, forehand, move a little bit of movement. But my coach is very interesting in his teaching. So I actually did not get into movement more than I had to in the early stages, because just out of the way that he reads the game. So his whole vision around it, it was pretty interesting. He just said, well, why are you moving? Stay close to the table, let the other guy run. So the whole concept was that, if you know how to read the game and if you know how to place the ball right, you actually don't have to learn how to jump around the table that much. Obviously,
Yeah.
that changes with the level, but early on, it actually proved to be quite useful. So there's more than one way to play this game, which is, I think, a lesson for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. It's really about doing exactly what you did and trying to work out how to move up level to level as you go through the tournaments. And it'd be good to talk about your tournaments now and how you kind of did in those. Um, did you wait for a period of time to kind of feel like you were kind of competent with what you were doing before you entered tournaments, or did you kind of jump straight in and start entering tournaments as soon as possible?
So, the interesting part is in the US, it's sort of a different structure with tournaments, so I could play pretty much every weekend in a tournament. Obviously,
Oh, really?
the size of the tournament is very different. So I had months when every weekend I would play in a tournament. So, and in the US, structure is actually very different. So I can go in and over one day, I would play 14 matches. So,
Right.
so it's a completely different approach rather than anywhere else from what I could, gather obviously online and people sharing about it. So the tournaments really, I mean, you would imagine them more like essentially learning to play people you don't know. I mean, over
Yeah.
time you learn other players, but the point of it was not really to compete. The point was to learn how to play against other players, what kind of game everyone has, what do people do, what they do not do at a certain level. Rather than just go out and set the site and just say, look, I'm going for the first place. So obviously nobody ever wants to lose, but earlier on they were mostly educational, if you will. Later on, we did pick some bigger tournament names and set the sites. Okay, we're going to practice specifically to get to a certain level in a tournament. But that came a little bit later.
How did you do in your tournaments? Were you finding that what you were doing in practice was working in tournaments? Were you able to execute, or were you struggling with kind of using your skills in that kind of real environment?
So here's the interesting point. Because I played in tournaments so many times, what actually happened was that I was used to competing, which
Okay.
was very different from some players that disappear into a training session for 6 months, a year, 3 months, whatever. And then they pop out and they expect to just go ahead and overpower people. And the difference in the training environment versus a competing environment is night and day.
How long did it take you to reach that 2000 level once you'd started training and then playing tournaments?
Sure. So I started, I guess, my first tournament. I got ranked somewhere around, I guess, 1200 or something like that. Or 1100. I don't even remember.
Okay.
But basically, it took 2 years and 4 months for me to break into 2000.
Right.
I originally, just like your year challenge, I had a goal of breaking it in a year, and there were some players that I've looked up online, obviously younger, that did that. So I was hoping to do the same thing, but obviously being an adult, holding a full-time job, and even though I was still playing a lot, it was taking some time away. But
Yeah.
hitting at 2 years and 4 months mark, it still to many people felt like it was a big enough accomplishment that it was worthy of admiration. So, and when I started, I looked at these players, the 2000s, like, oh my God, these guys are brilliant. They're fantastic and incredible. Obviously, I could only dream of seeing some players that were 2,500 and up, the world class Olympic level. But the 2000 itself was a goal enough. So when I broke that level, I mean, it really felt like the world, even though I've been breaking it up and down ever since.
So, on your way to that 2000, did it seem pretty steady progress, or did you have times where you seemed like you were at a plateau and then suddenly something clicked and you went up a big jump? Like, how did it work?
Oh, I was completely frustrated throughout the whole experience. When you're
Right.
training, yeah, when you're training and you feel like you've got it, you're preparing for a big tournament, you're coming up and it's sort of like, goop, and you lose in the first match. It feels horrific, and you're like,
Yeah.
man, and that guy didn't do anything, and I'm just, kind of, I was prepared for a different game, and come on, so this is just not right. So a lot of it was up and down, and there's just too many ways to play the game. There are
Yeah.
players I would just go ahead, basically try to go right through, and their blocking game was just superior. There were players that could return my serves well. There are players that had excellent serves. So it's never a sure thing. I mean, and that's kind of setting the admiration for some of the world class players, how they're able to pretty much take anyone on with the same approach and have a pretty standard game to it that just looks amazing. So
Yeah.
but for me it was up and down all the way. I mean, I would have tournaments where I'd have excellent results, and then I would turn around and have horrible losses. For example, I was supposed to actually break a level quite higher several times. I came off a match where I beat a 2280, right? And this was back when I was about 1800. So
Oh
this
wow.
guy is, it was a junior level player. I mean, junior on the junior Olympic team here in the U.S. This young kid, and I managed to beat him in the fifth. It was a pretty interesting game, and then I turned around and lose to a 1600. So
Yeah.
so these things happen very frequently. The ups and downs, even in the same tournament. The improvement, I guess, my takeaway from it is that the improvement is never steady, and you only know when you really improve when you finally reach that threshold and you beat a certain type of player, certain caliber or skill level, and you don't ever lose to the players below that. And
Yeah.
and I think that's when you truly know that the game has evolved, and it takes a really long time to do that because we're always as weak as our weakest link.
Yeah. I agree. Like, I mean, the up and down can really kill some people.
I guess the best way to refer to table tennis is a constant, ongoing beating and frustration, but it's
Yeah.
but it's the rewarding one. So that's where the difference lies.
Okay. So you reached that level of 2000. When was that? What was the year and month?
So I guess it was sometime in 2010, early 2010, maybe
Okay.
like
So
March or
that's kind of
April level, something March or April, something like that.
that's kind of 5 years ago now, roughly, isn't it? And I think since then you've stayed pretty steady at kind of like that 2000 level, just kind of wobbling up and down a little bit, but pretty much at that
Yeah,
point.
yeah. One thing that I did that was very different is I felt that I stagnated when I reached that level. So for the next year, I was trying to get higher. I was hoping to break 22, and I was stagnant. And I guess one of the biggest mistakes that I did is I started looking for other coaches, and
Right.
basically looking at who else can show me something that I don't know, that I can't see. And I was a little bit frustrated that I wasn't breaking through in certain regards. And Gerald got busier, I went in and I worked out with a couple other training partners and things like that. And the good that happened out of it was that I learned to move well. My footwork got better, things like that. The bad part is I lost all the strategic and tactical things that Gerald has brought up in me. So I guess,
Right.
I was, my game started to evolve from being strategic and patient to being something that's fresh and more a young man's game, if you will. And, as a result, it didn't go anywhere. And then I've been at it for maybe about another year. And then my daughter was born, and my wife had first a difficult pregnancy. Then my daughter was born. She's now 3.5, and then obviously I got too busy, and my attention just disappeared. And instead of continuing to play, which I still would every once in a while, I started coaching.
Right. Let's imagine for a second that you continued at your 25-hour a week table tennis right up to the present day. Kind of, what kind of player do you reckon you would be if you had done that and hadn't kind of toned it down?
Well, good question. I mean, I guess we'll never know, but when I'm dedicated, I'm really dedicated. So I'll give you an example. When I was trying to, for a while I felt like my feet weren't moving. So to get my feet to move, I wanted to put myself under pressure. So I was the only crazy guy wearing an 8-pound weight vest around my chest while doing multi-ball exercises. I mean, people would look at me like I'm insane. I would go through 6 shirts in 2 hours.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I would do all kinds of crazy things. I hired a personal trainer who had all kinds of what do you call those stretchable bands wrapped around me? So when I set my mind into something, I do it full force. So we'll never know, but I guess the drive is always there. I think overall I'd have a mix of essentially. People always said I have sort of the textbook table tennis style. I'm easy to read because everything is so classical. The ball goes to the forehand, it's the forehand. The ball goes to the backhand, it's the backhand. Kind of a very predictable game. So, I think I would just be a solid all-around player. But actually on that topic, I came back to the club a little while ago, and I'm actually training right now, not a lot, maybe just twice a week, keeping myself warm. To prepare for a team tournament in November. So I was asked to play on the team. So I'm doing the best I can to recover. And so far, it's looking better and better. I think being away from the game also has its advantages.
Yeah. I know that you've got 2 books out. You've got Breaking 2000, which is the story of how you went from nothing to a 2000 ranking. And then you've got your second book, which is called The Next Step. Both really good books. Could you just very briefly give us a couple of bits of information about each book and kind of who you're kind of writing to when you wrote those books?
Sure, I'm happy to. So, the first book was kind of, I wrote about 3/4 of it in over a weekend. I just wanted, I was pretty excited, and I decided that I was going to sum up and sort of create the story of how I actually did what I did. And then I shared it with someone, and they said, "Look, you should really wrap it in a book." So, and I did. I guess for the most part, I'm writing to peers, aspiring table tennis players that pop in, maybe by accident, maybe on purpose, in the table tennis club, and they admire these great players, and they have no idea how to become one of them. So this was sort of it's not a book about technique, it's just the journey. I think the journey is just as important as all of the tangible elements somebody has to possess. But for the most part, the story is really just an average guy, and I consider myself pretty average, nothing special. So, popping in and just putting in the time, putting in the energy, putting in the thoughts, and what came out of it. So that was basically the goal of it. And then, I try to share as many tidbits that worked for me, that I thought were important enough that if I knew them earlier, that would have been a big help to me as I developed my game. So, if I had someone's sort of shoes to follow, the process would be easier. So I hope, my goal with that book was to give more players the path, essentially, and I try to make it as inspirational as possible, because that was really my drive, that inspiration itself.
Yeah. And then you wrote your second book, The Next Step. So what were you trying to accomplish with that book?
So the next step was sort of a little bit more serious of a book. It wasn't as inspirational, but I took a look. So part of my stagnation had to do with the mental game, and that's not something that I worked on earlier either. So what I try to do is I try to put all of the big pieces and explain them as thoroughly as possible about things that are needed to go the next level. And for me, that's sort of like my plan to break it to the next steps and next level. I took a look at it as a combination of tactical strategy, sort of the prerequisites, which is a technical piece, and then the mental game. So that's how I kind of broke down the book, and it's sort of another, I guess, artifact that I could provide the players, so they could think about things that they do not know in one pretty uniform package. what I find is a lot of experienced players, they're simply get too good too quickly to remember what it's like learning. So, and the way the level of understanding they have in the game is just so superior that it's difficult to explain it to people learning. So it's not this. So the book I produced is not exactly for beginners. It's more for intermediate players. But it kind of shares the pieces of the puzzles that need to be combined together to move up levels.
Sure. Well, cheers. Thank you very much, Alex.
Thanks for having me, Ben. I really appreciate inviting me for the podcast. This has been great.
Yeah, it's been a good chat. If people want to contact you or read a bit more about you, is there a website that they can go to?
I can be found. My website is breaking2000.com. Every once in a while, I will post something new. And, really, my email, alex.polyakov@gmail.com, or just alex@breaking2000.com will get anyone connected to me. So, at any time, I'm always happy to help out with whatever I can, except for equipment. That I know nothing about.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alex. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, thanks to you, Ben. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I look forward to following your website and your blog a lot more.
Cheers. See you later, Alex.
Take care. Bye.
So I hope you enjoyed that chat. I really enjoyed talking to Alex, and I think there are a few things that stood out there. One was how well he described kind of how frustrating and up and down table tennis can be. And if you are a table tennis player or you're involved in table tennis, I'm sure you'll know that firsthand. But it can be really demoralizing at times when you think you're ready to go and perform, and then you just have that terrible loss, and then a minute later you're having a really good win, and it just, things just don't seem to add up. But what Alex really showed me was his huge level of dedication, the amount of time that he was prepared to put into table tennis as an adult around everything else he was doing, up to 25 hours a week even. And it really shows that that's what it takes. If you want to get good at table tennis as an adult very quickly, it's really all about putting in the work and just not giving up. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. I will have episode 4 coming to you very soon. Please subscribe to the channel on iTunes, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you very much for listening, and experttabletennis.com is the site to go and check out everything that I'm getting up to.